Okay.
We're good.
All right. Well, welcome back to SoulBack. This is the R&B podcast. Kyle here back with Tom and Ed. Tom is looking very toasty in that hockey jersey. What's going
My
on, Tom?
hockey jersey and my Atlantic Records hat. Shout out to Atlantic Records. They sent me and Kyle a nice little gift basket for the holidays. We appreciate you. The perks, guys, of supporting R&B right there.
Wow. And Ed, looking good as usual. What's going on?
Thank you, player. The only thing I get is slander from your favorite R&B artist in my inbox. So that's all I get. Coal in my stocking. But it's all to the good.
It's all good. Well, I mean, we have a lot to talk about this week. We were trying to figure out, were we going to talk about our year-end countdown that we just posted of our favorite 70 songs from 2020, but we might save that for next week because the momentum has been strong. We've been looking back at all these great years, and this year we land at 1997. Tom, I'm going to throw it to you first. When you look at the collages that I've made, and I somehow forgot Jagged Edge, but we'll talk about that later. When you look at this collage, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
Man, what a time to be alive is the first thing that came to mind. That was a good time for R&B music. Before we get into this, though, can I just say something? I'm still tripping from last week. We had a 15-year-old guest on who knew about R&B, more about R&B music than all three of us combined, it seemed like. It was amazing.
That's my boy Damon. Yes, that's my dog.
Prodigy right there. But yeah, 97. I'm excited to talk about this year and have our two guests join us later on to chime in as well.
But Ed, let's talk about 1997 here, because you are the oldest person in this group. Where were you in 1997, and what were your thoughts on R&B in 1997?
As I said last week, we are getting in the sweet spot of my R&B fandom right here. 97 was the year I graduated high school. So when I look at that collage, I just think of like driving around for like the first time, freedom, having these CDs rocking in my car. Yes, CDs. That's what we did back then. And I still do it because I'm old. But all of these songs here are just so representative of the sound that was evolving and going into the 2000s. We're going to talk about some legendary albums today from some legendary artists. There was just something in the water, 96, 97, especially 98. Some good stuff y'all going to hear today.
And I just look at this album or this year as like the year of breakout albums for a lot of these artists, like a Jon B, like a Joe, like a Brian McKnight even. Like these guys reached new success with these albums. But I mean, without even hyping it up so much, let's talk about some of these albums. I'm just going to get my collage ready here. Actually, I don't even need a collage. Can we just start off talking about Mariah Carey? Let's just get that one right out of here, because Shaquille Perry called you out, Ed, that Butterfly album. He demands that you do a recount and give it a 5-star rating.
Oh my God.
On SoulandStereo.com, you have it as a 4.5.
Yes, and I still say that it is my favorite Mariah album. It is probably her best album. I think I ranked it as her #1 album. Is it perfect? No, because it reminds me of Confessions, and not by length. My issue with Confessions is that album is a little bit too long. I love this album. I have said many times that there is a point on that album where it's like Breakdown, 4th of July, the sequencing. There's like a sequence of like 5 songs that is some of the best sequencing in the 90s R&B genre, period. So I have to give love to that album, but I don't love every song, and that's why it's not 5 stars. But is it a classic album and one of her better ones? Absolutely yes.
Tom, let me ask you, I know you didn't grow up listening to every single Mariah Carey song that came out, but I know that you were aware of the song Honey, and I know you were also aware of the song The Roof with the Mobb Deep sample. Like those are huge moments for R&B, because you saw at that time someone who was considered a pop artist transition over to that R&B hip hop sound. Like that was big.
You didn't even mention Breakdown, which is one of my favorite R&B songs of all time.
Yep.
I love our family who's chiming in the comments. I just wanted to shout them out real quick before I talk about this album. They're already arguing. It's like family, bickering. I love it. Our community here. Shout out to Damon. Shout out to Lawrence. Shout out to Watch These, who I know was really excited about this week. Shout out to Tar Heels fan. Shout out to Nicolette Carney. Shout out to Shaquille Perry, as always. Shout out to Slip and Slide Records, Ed. They're in the building.
Slip and Slide,
Wow.
yes.
Theo Sullivan Brandon is in the house.
Theo,
Thank
shout
you,
out
everyone.
Theo.
Thank you, everyone who's tuned in live. But yeah, I thought it was awesome, the direction she went on this album. But I don't think it's a front-to-back classic either. I wouldn't say there's no skips. Kyle, I know you're a fan of this album. I want to get your take.
Yeah, actually, Shaquille Perry and I were just talking about this before you guys got on the call. And I looked at that track list, and like I told Shaquille, if this is not a 5-star album, it's pretty damn close. Like,
Oh, it's
especially
close.
those first 9 songs, like you said, at the sequencing there are some incredible records. We didn't even talk about the song Baby Doll. Like, that song is an album cut now. That's a great song.
And that's what I keep talking about with these albums from this era. Like we talk about today with your little albums and your little playlists that like you can do your little challenges to, and you have one song that you like and you call it a classic. We're talking about albums that have incredible singles and incredible album cuts that never even really got radio play. Fans know it, but they're songs that you might hear maybe performed on a, during a live show. But other than that, they're just secret gems. And these are what make these albums so great. And Tom, I think he mentioned how, or either you did, Kyle, the hip hop influence in this album. That's something that actually really became prevalent in Daydream. We'll talk about that in 1995. I was just making some notes on that earlier. But here is where it was solidified, where Mariah, a lot of fans don't know this, you youngins, but there was a time, as much as we argue about who is R&B and who is pop, Mariah definitely was in that conversation. And this was the era when she started working much more with hip hop artists. She was doing all those remixes with JD. And it was helping because she had 2 lanes. She had the pop mainstream lane, but then she could switch over here, get on some urban stations as well that just kind of broaden her scope. That's some legendary stuff right there.
You guys haven't even mentioned the Prince cover that's on here featuring Drew Hill.
Yep.
Beautiful ones. I thought it was special for 2 reasons. One, Prince doesn't let just anyone do a cover of his music.
Yep.
And number 2,
not.
the fact that she did a duet with Drew Hill, of all people, who was still pretty young in the game at the time.
Yep.
So I thought I would love to hear the story of how that even all came together. So hopefully someday we'll hear it. I have to reach out to our boy Nokio, Kyle.
Yep, we do. And then 4th of July as well. That's a fantastic song. And that's
Love
on this album. So
shout out to our boy Damon. The Roof is my favorite, followed by Breakdown. I'm on the same page, bro.
I told you that sequencing is no joke.
So we might have to go back and see if that's a 5-star album.
And I'll just say one last thing, and you guys might mention this. It didn't feel manufactured. A lot of times when a pop star is collaborating outside their zone of a different genre, it feels a bit manufactured, like it doesn't work. This felt like it worked, which was great.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about another album here. Let's talk about Mary J. Blige, Share My World.
Woo!
Because, I mean, this album is a departure from the bad boy sound that she had on the first 2.
Yeah.
Worked with Rodney Jerkins, but she delivered on this one. Share My World is a great song. Like, that song by itself is amazing, but the album, the body of work, even when you talk about the Men We're Not Allowed to Speak Of, he has a great song on there. Like, the Babyface records, this is a great album.
I love this album. I know that we talk about, and we will talk about My Life and its legacy. I know what's the 411 was really groundbreaking for what it is, but front to back, I won't say it's better than My Life, but it's as good as My Life. I will put that up there. And I think it's better than her debut. It's from front to back, my favorite Mary album. And I think, again, when you look at the sequencing, when you look at the album cuts from The Man Who Shall Not Be Named, and so many others, like she's got a random song with the Locks that's off the chain. And when you take that and you take, of course, the big singles that we remember, she threw in Not Gonna Cry from the soundtrack. There's just so much going on here that just works so well. So if you look at My Life as kind of like her story and her sad story and blah, 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 I feel like this is the maturation of Mary, and she really takes it to a next level with the next album, with the Mary album. But this one takes her to another place where it's an evolution of the sound. It doesn't sound out of nowhere, but it sounds like growth. And that's why I love this one so much.
It's number 3 in the string of 4 straight classics, as I've been on record as saying. We've argued it. It's okay. It's not always agreeable. I love everything. The song, obviously, that was my first dance at my wedding, so that's a special one for me. That random song with the locks you mentioned, Can't Get You Off My Mind, is super dope as well. Love that one.
It is.
I Can Love You with Little Kim. That's your boy, Kyle Darkchild.
That is my boy. And let me just say this. Like, I don't listen to hip hop like that, but all I can say about Little Kim is the way she entered that verse is like incredible.
Oh,
one of my favorite feature verses of all time. And she flipped. I mean, the song that it samples, Kim's Queen Bee, hadn't been out that long. So all of a sudden, this beat drops. Imagine listening to this album and the beat drops, and then Mary just starts singing over it, and this is kind of tinkered R&B flavor to the beat. Incredible stuff. I'll never forget hearing that for the first time.
I've got to throw this out there as well. There was another Mary song on the Money Talks soundtrack that year, A Dream. You know that one, Ed?
I know I know it. Money Talks is back there. That's back there. Yes.
Another great song.
Ed, is Share My World a 5-star album?
I would say it's a 5-star album.
But Butterfly isn't.
Mariah fans are going to hit the ceiling, but I said what I said. That's a 5-star album.
I see someone, Tar Heels fan, doesn't like the song Searching. I actually like that one.
That's the weakest song on the album, but I do like it.
I don't mind it.
It's cool. Can we talk about another album here since we're talking about the females?
All right.
Janet Jackson's Velvet Rope album. Because this one was huge.
This was very big, and I know it's controversial. I saw IG, for those who aren't joining us there, players were like fighting in the comments about this one. So I'm sure a lot of opinions on this one.
What are the fights about, Ed?
I don't know. I think that some people aren't a fan. Some people love it. No, Shaquille, I don't think Velvet Rope is 5 stars either. And it falls more into the issue with Confessions. It gets a little murky on that second half. However, it's still a great album. And it's once again, and you're going to hear me keep saying this because this is something that artists struggle with today. Evolution. This is a sound that's different than the Janet album and different from the Pleasure Principle era by far. But look at how it sounds almost neo-soulish in a way, like almost neo-soulish. Not quite. You could feel like the elements coming together there. But this is why it's such a beloved project. It sounds so different, but it's still authentically Janet.
I like this one a lot too. I like the fact that when I read more about the background of this album and kind of what she was going through in life, and then I listened to it again, it made it even feel deeper for me. It made me appreciate it more. You know, she was in a dark place. And I just got Till It's Gone, the song she did, the kind of cover with Q-Tip. I love that one as well. It's one of my favorite songs ever. Always in rotation.
It's funny. I did not like that one at all when it came out. I did not like that song at all.
I agree.
It grew on me a lot later on.
Ed, I agree. That song is very different. And that song is a grower. Like, that's not one that you get right away.
No, I did not like it at all. But once I still copped the album because I was a big Janet fan. And sometimes when you can put a song within an album, I talked about this with Ro James' album this year, where I heard the singles and I was like, but within the context of an album, within a story is which an album should be, it works. So I liked it much better and it grew over me a lot over the years.
Ed, your boy Lawrence is going nuts in the comments. This album changed his life, so you better not speak down on it.
I'll never go at my boy Derry, but yes, I agree. This is my favorite. This is my personal favorite Janet album.
I mean, when you have
songs got better ones.
When you have songs like I Get Lonely and Go Deep, like those are some pretty amazing songs right there.
Shout out to Nancy Noir. You just missed the Janet talk. I'm sorry. We're sorry.
You can catch the replay.
Oh my God.
Archived on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Google Music, you name
Tidal?
it. I don't know if we're on Tidal.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know about that. I don't know if we're pulling Tidal coins yet.
Jay-Z does not pay my bills. It's not on Tidal. Can we talk about En Vogue's album, EV3? This, of course, is the album where Dawn makes her departure. Ed, that was a big deal back in the day.
It was quite a big deal back then. And as we know, she went on and she did the Lucy Pearl thing and whatever. You know, this album is solid. I have been on record to say that En Vogue is a group that I always really respected for what they could do. I mean, their vocal power is incredible, but I never really connected much with their songs. This album is good, and this is also the era of Don't Let Go, by far my favorite, En Vogue joint ever. But this is just a lesson for y'all, because we in this weird era where it's like either you must love every single thing about an artist you stand for life, or you hate them and you say that they are worthless and have no talent. It's okay to be like, that's a very talented artist. Not really for me, but a very talented artist. And that's how I've always been about En Vogue.
I was in 97, I was about 13, so I didn't catch this album in the time. This is another one I really got to go back and study some more and get to learn, because I definitely didn't check it out back then, guys. I'm sorry.
Right.
13-year-old Tom was definitely into big hip hop back then, believe it or not. But
yes, he was into hip hop and Power Rangers or something. He won't check it for
oh man, Ninja Turtles, definitely.
Yes.
Were you playing your Sega Genesis there?
Oh yeah, those were some good times. But let's stay on topic, guys.
All right, let's talk about SWV. Release some tension. As I look at this track list, and Tom, you can speak on this because you just listened to this album like a month ago. There's a lot of features on this album.
Yes.
Let's pull up my notes. Yeah, that was. Ed, do you remember in the time how that was received? The fact that they had all those features. I don't remember the reception, but it felt weird to me, especially because their first two wasn't like that.
Yes, I remember the reception was weird because this album was very feature heavy, very hip hop heavy. And again, when we talked about with Evolution, this is an album that evolved, and some people were like, I really like it though, especially like it has the big singles that everyone loves. But I think where it fails a little bit is some of those album cuts just don't feel natural. You just got random rappers of the day slapped on the back of songs. I'm like, I think that was like an E40 song, and then just like random people. There's a Snoop song, I think, and it just doesn't fit their vibe. But then you got like the Redman song, which kind of works. So there are places where it hits and doesn't hit, but as a fan, it's one that I really like. For some reason, I can recognize its flaws, but I still rocked with it a lot in 97.
Shaquille Perry said Rain might be their best song ever. I don't know about that. It's a great song. It's up there. Can We might be one of my top 5 Timbaland beats. I'll say that much.
Might be top 3.
It's up there as well. Yeah. I love that. There's a few album cuts on here I liked as well. I put out a top 10 SUV best songs list earlier this summer, and a few of these made the honorable mention. So, yeah, Ed, I didn't really get the hip hop features on this one. It felt a little forced at times, but I guess for 97, I can kind of see what they were trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, it was a sign of the times, but sometimes they worked, sometimes they didn't. I love the title track, and it has Foxy on it. I didn't realize who shouted him out. It might have been an R&B fan, our boy on Twitter, who sent me like the original with like the Missy version. I guess it was the demo, and I like that even better. So it's cool to look back at that, but I see why they went in that direction. Didn't just always work, but I'm a fan of the album.
This is a dumb question. I'm sort of intentionally asking you guys this question because I've seen it on Twitter before. So I'm not being dumb here, but I am.
I love when we get to answer dumb questions from Twitter. It's one of my favorite hobbies.
Yes, yes, I love to eviscerate them.
There's a huge debate that has gone on in the past about the song Rain and what the song is actually about, because people take the lyrics of that song out of context and make it into a sexual song. Ed, do you know what's going on here?
You can say, listen, y'all, like it can be a sensual song, and it is a loving sensual song without physically raining. I'm trying to keep this PG, player. You don't have to physically rain on somebody or to still be a sensual love song, which is what this is supposed to be. They don't have to. See, this generation is too literal. I need you to just put some actual. Like, this is figurative. Like, language and love can be figurative. It don't have to exactly mean that. We don't have to be super soaking the dude. Like, I'm trying to chill, Tom. I'm trying to chill.
Unfortunately, because look where we're at today. There's nothing super sensual or low key. Everything is in your face, over the top.
There's no subtlety, no writing, it drives me nuts.
A couple of other projects that came out from the ladies. I don't know if you guys had checked these ones out. Brownstone dropped an album, Changing Faces, Jeanne. So they dropped some albums. Did you guys check those one out?
Oh, you know, I got them all. That Jon A album I've talked about many times because
Yeah.
I copped that in 97 and I did not like it at all.
Wow.
And there are lots of fans of that album. And I went back about, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago. It's been since I had Soul and Stereo. And I listened to it and I loved it. And it's just like one of those albums that I feel like Tom talks about all the time, how he was like, you know, I was 13, my head wasn't in that space. But as an adult, maybe you can resonate with some of these songs a bit better. So I really think that Saturday Night, that album is a lot better with older ears. That Changing Faces album, I love to death. I love that album. I can't remember what was the third one you talked about.
Brownstone.
Oh yes, Brownstone has the banging singles on it. I don't really remember the album that much, but the singles were something. Those ladies be singing. Singing.
Tom, do you want to talk about the fellas now?
Let's do it. And before anyone gets mad if we don't talk about an album, remember, we only have so much time. So we trying to touch on everything we can and still, you know, keep it in the time frame. So don't be mad. We'd be sitting here for 5 hours straight if we could. We love this stuff.
Yeah,
Yes.
unless you guys deliver us food via Uber Eats.
Yeah,
Maybe
send me an Uber Eats and we'll get that rocking.
Yeah, and then I can
Like
sit here and
eat
eat
on
and
camera.
talk, but I gotta make dinner after. But males here. Let's start with Jon B, Tom. You love Jon B.
Oh man.
Whenever there's a chance for you to talk about Jon B, you will. And a lot of that has to do with this album right here, Cool Relax, which people on Twitter think that's his last album. Actually, he's put out a lot more than that
Oh
since.
my God.
But I mean, Cool Relax, people still talk about this album. Tom, why?
Whatever happened to Jon B after Cool Relax, guys? Any idea?
Oh God.
This album, as people say on the internet these days, this is an album. I mean, this
Period.
an album.
Period with a
Period.
T.
Period with the T on the end.
This album was one from a young Tom. It helped me fall in love with R&B music. Probably I related to him a bit because I was a white dude. He was a cool white dude. I wanted to be like Jon B. I'm saying it for the record. It's for the recording. So,
Okay.
but hey, I love the song that front to back. This is a 5-star for me. Just relatable. You know, I love the fact that his debut was with the help of Babyface, but he stepped out on his own on this one and made an even better album. And They Don't Know. Shout out to our boys, Tim and Bob.
Yep.
Love that song. Classic. So many songs on this album. Ed, what were your thoughts on it?
Man, player, I'll tell you this. If you go over to soulandstereo.com, about a month ago, I ranked Jon B's entire discography. And I hadn't heard Cool Relax in forever. And it's funny, you joke, but you don't joke, because when I posted that review and ranking, people are like, I didn't know he had so much stuff after Cool Relax. Yes, he had plenty of stuff after Cool Relax. But Cool Relax, I remember liking it, but just like listening to it again today, I wouldn't give it 5 stars. I think I gave it 4.5. It is so good. It is so good. And a defining album for him. And I don't think back in 97, it was an album that we appreciated, but it wasn't celebrated like, you know, like a Butterfly or Mary J. It didn't have that sort of legacy, or Badu. But looking back, it's just because the playing field was so competitive then. But it absolutely is as good as any of the best albums we'll talk about today.
And the cool Relax remix with Guru, which is amazing.
Yep.
And
shout out Guru. Yes.
Yeah. Rest in peace, Guru. The song Keep It Real with Coco and Jay-Z by Jon B from the Have Plenty soundtrack. I have no idea what Have Plenty is, but that song is a gem right there.
Kyle, Tom doesn't watch movies, so he doesn't know what happened.
I have no idea.
You didn't miss anything with that movie.
I have no idea what's going on. Can I talk about the Tupac record here?
You can talk about the Tupac record.
Well, I mean, it's just interesting because you have a Tupac record on this album, which I think is like the last actual Tupac collaboration before he passes away. Because after that, they just started copy and pasting his verses on everything. But that latter half of the album, those last few songs when he has like Diane Warren records on it, songs with David Foster, like I'm just curious on what the label was trying to do there. You have a record with Tupac at one point, and then you have these poppy ballads. Like, I don't know. I always found that to be really interesting.
The Tupac thing is pretty simple from what John has said. If I remember correctly, he found out that Tupac was a big fan of his. And it's like, well, if Pac is a fan, we hooking up. And they just put out that together, and they did a couple other songs too. I think it was just throwing on one of the hottest rappers at the time.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, okay, slide on in. And he made it work. It didn't feel like Snoop Dogg on the SWV album. It didn't feel like completely out of place. So it worked.
No, that song
And
is
shout out to
amazing.
Jon B. I just always have to say, for the record, he is one of the coolest R&B artists I've ever met. I've met hundreds, and he's super down to earth. If you guys ever get a chance to meet him, really cool dude.
Absolutely. Let's talk about another album here. Ed, didn't you dress up as Usher for Halloween once?
Oh my gosh, I did dress up like Usher for Halloween. This album cover, in fact, yes.
Well, let's give the people some history on this one, because a lot of people think this is his debut album, but it's not. He actually dropped an album in '94, but this is his breakout album. You know, he had gone through puberty, his voice had changed, and people weren't really sure what was going to happen with Usher. He didn't really quite hit the mark on that debut, but this second album, you're talking about #1 hits, one after the other, with You Make Me Wanna, Nice and Slow, My Way. You got the record with Monica on here. There's a lot of big songs on here. Ed, talk about Usher in this era.
Once again, I'm going to go back to that E word, evolution, because Usher's debut, a lot of people just like, I remember at the time, not even younger fans, I remember at the time people acting like this was Usher's debut album. And I'm like, y'all don't remember the songs from a couple years ago? Like, he had an album and it was well received. It is a solid album. I actually like it a lot, but it just did not resonate in that time period. Because again, the landscape was so competitive. You got to do better than come out with just a good album in 1994. Like, you got to come hard. And that's what he did in 97. His voice had changed. His persona had changed. He had reflected his music to hit that young fan base. He took his shirt off and was dancing around with Goldfish. And once he did that, that's all it took to revamp his image. So this album may not be his debut, but it is the beginning of the Usher that went on to have the career into the 2000s that's so loved today.
Ed, can you pull up the picture of when you were perched on a staircase with goggles on for Halloween, looking like Usher? You have that handy?
Oh my gosh, I can find that. I don't know how we can make that on this screen, but yes, I do have that. I'll have to dig that up.
Stay tuned for the after party as we try to get that on.
Yes.
I want to highlight a couple of songs here. Bedtime is a great song. Babyface did that record. And then Ed does, and this, we go back to the love letters, the record I Will.
Mm-hmm.
The one that
I will. I
did.
love I Will. I have a penny for your thoughts. I love that song.
Will that line work in real life in 2020?
Player, there was some, again, when we talked about the writing, like there's writing that worked so well in 97. I could have spit that game to a young lady in the halls of my high school, and she would have thought I was the most sensitive brother. I had to put that on Twitter. Y'all would make it a meme, and I would get slandered for like 5 days straight. Like, no, that subtlety does not work in 2020.
Tom, I bring that up because didn't Tank post something recently talking about today's generation? I'm going to read this text.
Oh, no.
Here.
Oh, boy.
This just reminds us that we're in a crazy time.
Don't do it.
Well, wait, I'll paraphrase here.
Paraphrase, please.
There's some words I'm not allowed to say here. But pretty much, a man complimented his girl and told her that she was his world. And she replied back and said, that's some sissy stuff. That makes me want to cheat on him. This is why R&B is dead, guys. We can't embrace the love anymore.
Where's the love?
It is still funny that earlier this year, Tank was not as receptive to 90s R&B as he is now, but I'll save that argument for another time.
Hey,
and I said
Damon's
that
generation.
now you know I got soul, so don't be hollering at them this time.
Damon, you're in trouble, boy. You're coming into this generation. There's no love out there, man. Stay tuned.
I already warned Damon. It's rough for my boy.
Okay, well, since we're talking about romance here, Ed, would this song work in 2020? All the Things Your Man Won't Do by Joe.
Actually, that probably would work because we are so shady that we would probably be like, oh, that's great. That is a real man. Do we listen to these songs? That's a love letter song. Like, he is making a song about stealing somebody else's girl. But it's Joe, so we're like, oh, it's cool. It's Joe.
It sounded smooth.
Oh, it sounded smooth, but it also sounded shady.
Tom, this Joe album, I would argue it's his best. Definitely his breakthrough. A lot of great songs on here. Good Girls is a great song. You have a record on there that the Backstreet Boys end up covering a year later. No one comes close. But Tom, this album, just talk, because he still performs these records at his show.
Yeah, I love also the song "The Love Scene."
Yes.
A lot of people think this is Joe's debut album, who don't even realize he had an album before this. I still won't say it's his best. I'd say it's his second best, but it's close. I mean, My Name is Joe, obviously, is the biggest one. And I still think it's just slightly better, but I could see your argument, but love this one as well. It's definitely among my favorites. I came out in 97.
Great album. And let's talk about Brian McKnight, the Anytime album, because it's interesting when we look at this. The lead single was not Anytime. The lead single was the record with Mace, which at the time I think was a big hit, but I don't know if he even likes that record anymore.
He doesn't.
He doesn't.
He doesn't. I didn't.
But Mace Mace has a significant line in that song. The first rapper with an R&B
line?
The first rapper with an R&B budget. Like R&B budgets were a thing back then.
Yeah.
Yes, an R&B budget was a big deal back then. Now look how times have changed 20 years later. But yeah, I mean, this was a big song. I remember this song being played to death. I did not like it because I didn't like the evolution. It didn't feel like Brian McKnight. It felt like Brian McKnight on a Mace song because it felt like a Bad Boy Mace production and Brian McKnight singing the hook. That's what it felt like to me. It didn't work. But I did like the album. I like Anytime way better than that. And I don't even know if that was an official single.
It was, yep.
That was a great record. Album itself was probably one of my favorite Brian albums, now that I think about it.
The thing I remember about that period was remembering how massive Anytime became, though. It crossed over to pop, did it, Kyle?
Yeah. Yep,
it did.
And became a massive pop hit. So I'd just be curious to know how that even happened. Like, how did he able to cross over with just that one song?
No, well,
because
Tom, Brian actually told us in an interview before it was because of the success of the Mace record. It got him on MTV. So after that, people started noticing who he was. So by that point, once you have that exposure and people start recognizing you, if you can put out anything that sounds remotely good, you're good.
That was look at the magic times. You put out good music and it does well. Yeah. And also you have to remember the lane that R&B was in, especially around 93, 94, going into the late 90s. It was much easier to cross over because R&B was receptive to mainstream ears. So a great R&B song, no question it can get traction on the pop charts.
Yep. Got a couple more albums here to talk about here. Let's talk about some groups here.
Well, hold on, Kyle. I've got a request. Well, I guess he's a rookie, but Rashawn Patterson's album.
We'll get there.
I love Rashawn Patterson's. Okay, we'll get there.
We'll get there.
Calm down. Someone asked for it in the comments. Theo Sullivan. We'll get there.
His name is Theo Sullivan. I thought it was Brandon O'Sullivan.
We're just going with
Theo. It is. Oh my God.
I'm confused now. I got some groups that I want to talk about here. Let's go with this one. Let's go with Boyz II Men, Evolution. I've gone on record to saying that I don't love this album, but I have to take into consideration that they were coming off their 2 album. It's like that Thriller effect. You can't really have an album that's going to be as big as Thriller. Doesn't matter what you put out, even if it goes platinum, it's not going to be as big as Thriller. And I think Boyz II Men kind of suffered from that with this album. I think R&B was starting to change at that time with the Bad Boy sound.
Yeah.
But they still got a number 1 hit with what is that song called again? I can hear it. Four Seasons of Loneliness. Is that what it's called? Yeah. Okay. Is the Mama song on this album?
Yes.
The Mama song is on this album.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. So
also the song, the saddest song ever is on this album, Kyle, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it's Doing Just Fine.
Oh,
yo,
man, that's Can we
talk about that song for a second?
I love that song, and it's crazy that it's like one of the first songs on the album too.
First song.
It's literally the first song, and Wanye makes the biggest proclamation you could make. As sure as my name is Wanye.
As sure as my name is Wanye.
Like, what else could it be? Like,
that song will break you down. I mean, if you put that on. You'll be happy skipping down the road. You hear that song, you're down in the dumps, guys.
Well, we've been talking about top 5 saddest R&B songs of all time, and I've named like 30 at this point. This is a top 5 saddest R&B song of all time.
Yes,
it's up there. But to your point about the Thriller effect with this album, I love this album. But again, you were right. In '97, coming off of 2, a lot of people were like, it was the same thing with Nas's It Was Written. I remember when that came out and dudes hated that album. And today people love it more than Illmatic because it sounds more kind of like modern. I think Illmatic might be a little too old for some ears. But this album reminds me of that in that it does not have that big giant legacy, but it still did well. It just didn't do as well. And I like it. I think it's one of the better Boyz II Men albums. I think it's really strong and quite underrated because it just has such a huge shadow cast over it from the Gigantic 2.
Kyle, our friend Nancy Noir chimed in. Every podcast has a saddest song. See, at least there were sad songs back then. I challenge anyone to name a sad song that's come out in the last 5 years in R&B.
Well, they don't have sad songs. They have like miserable songs. And there's a difference. There's a difference between being sad and being like, I hate my man, I will kill him. That's the difference.
Yeah. Ed, I was going to get into that dynamic trio that formed the group in '97, but before we
do
that,
been waiting for this.
We have to talk about the Bobby Brown album, Forever.
Next.
Oh,
what?
What?
This album actually, it doesn't have good reviews.
No, it doesn't. And listen, I know I'm the dude that everybody's like, oh, you don't show the king of R&B and in love. And, I won't get onto that. This album was not good, and I'm not going to front. I will say as an objective reviewer, even though I'm not a Bobby fan, that he does have some big albums that we'll talk about in a couple weeks. This ain't the week to talk about it. This comeback was not popping.
Well, let me ask you this. What happened? I mean, do you remember back in that time? Because he was the king of R&B, and what happened with this album?
Well, by the time this album came out, maybe not so much as later, but by '97, it was just more of like Bobby was known more for like the drama. And whereas that a lot of that would get heightened even more later on. And some of that is fair, some of that is unfair, as we know, because he is not always, sometimes we put stuff on him that it's not his fault. But this just was not a good album. It did not have anything that popped off. And it just, between the drama and the weak response, it just didn't last. I remember it coming out, and that was it. I don't remember anybody actually copying.
All right. We have a request from Watch These to skip talking about this album and move on. So let's keep it moving, guys.
Jeez.
Oh, I will happily do that to talk about brothers who put out a much better album, as Kyle can attest.
Dude, how has Damon, a 15-year-old, heard all of these albums in his lifetime? I mean, have you had enough minutes in your lifetime to hear all this?
He does research. That's what I'm saying. That's why I do not, when there are people that's like, well, I don't have time to listen to that old stuff. All I know is Summer Walker. Well, that's because you don't. We have this gigantic day. This ain't like back then when I had to go buy all of those things. We have this gigantic database at our phone's fingertips to just listen to this stuff. And a true fan will do that. A Summer Walker fan will just listen to Summer Walker and say everything else is trash. No, you are.
All right. So let's talk about another group here. This is a super group. Ed, you're going to be really excited for this one. I'm gonna lay it out for you. I'm gonna throw you the lob. You're gonna finish this basket right here. This super group consists of a legendary game changer, someone who has impacted the game truly and dearly. We have vocalists that are from prior groups that came together to form this fantastic group. Ed, what is that group's name?
That group doesn't have a name. It has initials. It has a moment player. It's a moment.
Wait,
3 letters.
I wasn't talking about LSG here.
Oh, no.
We're talking about Milestone, Babyface, Casey and JoJo, and the boys at After 7. Can we talk about Milestone? I Care About You.
Didn't they have one song?
It was a great song, though.
I'm just going off of this podcast.
You love that song, Ed.
shout out to the Soul Food soundtrack, because that might
Yes.
actually be a 5-star album right there.
Yes.
Oh, no question. That was an incredible soundtrack. And I do like Milestone, but Milestone did not have an album like someone else we'll talk about in a second. I'll let you have your little Milestone.
No, that was a great song. But now we can talk about Levert, Sweat, and Gil. Ed, let's paint the picture here. 1997. Where were you? What were you doing when you got the news that these three artists would be coming together for an album?
I had no idea. I was sitting, I remember this moment, like picture it, player, picture it. I am sitting in my grandparents' house in Portsmouth, Virginia. Shout out to the hometown of Missy Elliott. And watching whatever video show is on at this time. And I see this room, this dark room, and it's like LSG is the artist. And of course, I don't know who that is. And then I see Levert, and then I see Sweat, and then I see Gil. I'm like, what is this? What is this? And they dropped this incredible song called My Body, which was one of the best of the year. And then we got an album that lived up to the hype. We got a sophomore album later on. It didn't, but we already talked about 2003, so never mind. But for this moment in time, player, can you imagine your three favorite artists coming together to give you, Kyle, this would be like if Brandy and Ashanti and I don't know, that sounds like a mess, but
Hey man,
whatever.
I got
Your
TG.
three
I got
favorites come
TGT
together.
already. We're good, Ed.
This
we
is
got
how-
TGT.
Ed, you're explaining how me and Kyle felt when we found about TGT coming together. Right, Kyle?
Oh gosh.
Yes.
We
I
love
was excited for
TGT.
TT. Yes, I was excited, but I was not excited about the actual album. That's another conversation.
Oh, my.
Are you saying that
Yes.
LSG is better than TGT?
Oh, they murdered TGT. LSG, TGT knows that. Stop playing.
All right. Immature dropped an album that year as well. Let's get into some rookies here, because we're not going to consider LSG a rookie, because Ed would just pick him as the rookie of the year right away.
Yeah, I would.
But I mean, I guess then Casey and JoJo's not really a rookie of the year either. But I'm gonna just name a couple of groups here, and we'll get started on this. We have Jagged Edge, who again I forgot on our collage, so my apologies to the Casey brothers. Don't kill me.
To only the Casey brothers? What about Wingo?
Yeah,
What
like-
about Kyle?
Poor
yeah,
Wingo gets no love. What?
Wingo and Kyle, those are my guys. Shout out to them
Oh.
too. But
Oh
Allure,
gosh.
we have Mario Winans. Yes, he did drop a debut album in
He did?
1997. Hurt No More is not his debut, but he looks pretty pain. He looks like he's in pain on this album too.
On this album cover, he looks like he just heard Doing Just Fine, guys.
Little
Yeah.
player. He did not want to know. He told him to keep it on the low.
We've got Tom's favorite group, Next. Do you manage Next, Tom?
Oh
I
my
think so.
goodness. I only manage, what's that group I manage? Van Jess?
Van Jess.
That's
yes,
the only
Van
group.
Jess. He's got Van Jess and Next.
I think Tom is like Next's publicist, but anyway.
RL is my boy. That's all I
Yes.
gotta say.
We got Rasan
Oh,
Patterson. Sam Salter. I don't know if our friend Isaiah is in here, but he loves Sam Salter.
What an underrated album. Yes.
We've got Casey and JoJo. We've got Erica Badu. We have, I'm just going to put it out there right now. This will be my number one album of the year. We have Frankie. Because we
Wow.
got to talk about Frankie later. I don't know if it'll be my
Uh-huh.
number one. I think I just jumped the gun here, but Frankie,
You-
amazing. We have 98 Degrees. I think people are kind of confused that I just said them, but
Yes.
there's a reason for that. We have the Rockefeller group. Chris John, is that what they're called?
Chris John, yes.
Yeah.
Another
Yep.
extremely underrated group.
And we have Uncle Sam, which Derek Dunn asked me to review a couple of weeks back, and I had told him I don't even know who Uncle Sam is. Uncle Sam even his debut? Is that
Yeah,
the
that's
debut?
his debut. Yes.
Okay.
Oh my, you talk about a sad song. Now that might be worse than Doing Just Fine.
Wow.
Yeah.
And until recently, I thought Uncle Sam and Chucky Booker were the same person.
Oh my
Oh
God.
God.
Pull that Atlantic hat over your face.
So we have Erica Badu and we have Casey and JoJo as well. So much to uncover here. I'm just gonna throw it to you guys with a group. You
Well,
guys just
hold on. You haven't even named a couple others, Kyle.
whom?
Have you named Rasan Patterson?
I did.
Have you named Chico DeBarge, Long Time No See album?
That's his debut.
No, it's not his debut.
Oh, I think I just skipped.
He didn't
My
come up
bad.
earlier.
You're
It's
right.
okay. There's too many to name. We
You're
got
right.
not
Yeah,
enough
it
time.
is.
I just
No,
want
they
to
were
make sure
like
it gets
5
mentioned.
R&B albums a week back then. Like we couldn't do all of them.
Mhm.
I just wanted to make sure I mention it and don't get screamed at by anyone.
But I think I just lost us on the gram. Okay, I'm back. I mean, where do we begin? Let's start off here. I'm gonna throw a couple of names here, and you guys just get started. Tom, let's talk about Next, who
I
you
like
may or may not do publicity for, but what I do know
Oh my
is
goodness.
what I do know is
I
that
feel
Too
like-
Close is
I feel like I am one of the people who carries the torch for Next, especially because
I think so.
Too Close, I mean, was the biggest commercial hit, if you think about it, of that time of all the groups on the
Good
pop.
God. Yes, it was. If I never hear that song again. I
Oh
will
my
be very
goodness.
happy.
Shout out to my boy KG, who
Oh, yeah,
discovered Next and produced it.
That's
There's
a
some
great
gems on
song,
this
Great
album.
song.
but I
I-
got so sick of it.
Aside from that song, I like this album because there's some album cuts I like. I wouldn't call it, maybe it's close to a classic for me personally, but it definitely gets lost in the shuffle of those discussions of 112 versus Jagged Edge
Mhm.
versus Drew Hill. So I just like to give Next their shine.
Yes.
And that I Still Love You remix with Big Pun, I love that one.
Yo, the song Cozy.
Cozy, oh, you
No,
know
that's
that's
a
one of
great
my
song.
favorites.
Yes. Ed, do you want to talk about Erykah Badu's debut? Because On and On, Next Lifetime. There's a couple big records on here, Ed.
A couple big records. This is probably one of the better albums of the year, in a year that's already stacked with hits. I mean, the thing that I chuckle about with On and On is I saw that video and I thought it was a commercial for like one of those Chitlin Circuit plays. I'm like, what is this? Because it didn't look or sound like anything I had ever heard at the time. Again, this is the Bad Boy era. So Badu's style of music was not something that was prevalent. And coming off of, when we talk about Brown Sugar D'Angelo, this is another of that step into that neo soul direction. And to me, one of the pinnacles of it. So yes, no question. This is my personal favorite Badu album, and off the chain, no question. Trend-setting album.
Let me talk about Casey and JoJo, because some people might know, some people might not know that my mom is like the reason why I listen to R&B, and I remember all my life. Like, if you thought Too Close was all over the radio, All My Life was right behind it.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was.
And that's like the biggest wedding song of all time now. And it's funny because when I talk to people on Twitter now that are Jodeci fans, they don't even really like the Casey and JoJo era. But you have this other fan base that's a little more poppy. They love Casey and JoJo. They don't even know Jodeci exists. So I think Casey and JoJo did a great job here by making that transition, and it worked for them. Whether you like it or not, it definitely worked.
Yeah, it was a definite, again, evolution of their sound from what we were used to from Jodeci. It sounded like a completely different group, and that's a good thing. But I mean, to your point, it was not something, especially that All My Life, it was not something that I really resonated with. Like, this ain't my Jodeci. It's something that I appreciated later on as an album. That album is good. And a couple of their other later releases were pretty good. So as bodies of work, they're good. That song, that and Too Close, y'all can leave those in 97, 98. I got so sick of them.
The thing I love, though, was it Dalvin that told us the story? 'Cause
Yeah.
I think that's more of who Casey and JoJo really are. Remember,
Yeah.
it was Dalvin who told us someone took the group Jodeci into the streets and made to try to make them more street and more hood for their music. I forgot what the story was, but I mean, that's who Casey and JoJo were. What you heard on that album, that wasn't an effort to just try to be pop. That was their original sound.
Yep.
Yeah.
Their gospel roots, if you will. I'm gonna ask you guys about this Jagged Edge album because, again, this is an album that has one big hit, I Gotta Be. And I talked to JD recently, who did the album, and he said that he had a miss on this album, which was the up tempos. He didn't execute that one correctly, and because of that, they weren't able to come right out of the gate with massive hits like 112 and Drew Hill did. But Tom, I know there's a bunch of great ballads on here. Like, they did a great cover of Wednesday Lover.
I love that song.
Yeah.
And then there's another saddest song ever on this album too. It's Funny How.
That's a sad song.
How Raindrops They Fall. I'm gonna have to pull that album out. I love that album, and it's weird that I know that, Jay Heartbreak gets a lot of love, and it should. And it's funny that JD said he couldn't really pull off the up tempos because they're not too many. But you know, I'm a ballad lover. That's cool. Even the way you talked to me, I thought was fine. So as an album, as a debut, this is how you debut. I thought it was great.
Personally, though, when you look at it, like, it's interesting JD said that. I mean, this was almost in the same tempo as 112's debut. The only thing that was missing was 112 had that single with Biggie that did really well. Jagged Edge didn't have a song like that.
Yeah.
That was the turning point, really.
Yeah.
And on this album, The Rest of Our Lives by Jagged Edge, that's like one of the only times you actually get to hear Kyle sing. He's singing in that falsetto. He's saying "Hold Me" for like 10 minutes, and then you hear Wingle right after that. So
yes,
it's kind of interesting to see how that dynamic changed over the years. Because right now, when I hear their records, it's mostly Brian and Brandon. You hear Wingle and Kyle in the back, but on that debut album, you could actually hear all four of them.
And shout out to our boy Tar Heels fan who's going absolutely nuts in the comments about this album. I guess one of his favorites.
I think it's safe to
must
assume
be.
that.
Tar Heels naming some bangers though, so I can't hate.
Ed, let's talk about Allure, Mariah Carey's group. This is actually a very underrated debut album.
This was a really big, and it's, again, to look at it with 2020 eyes and ears, it's like, Allure was a big deal. It was kind of a big deal in 97. This is another record that when I heard it for the first time, I remember exactly where I was. I was standing outside in my backyard, messing around with my little headphones or whatever, and this came on. And I didn't know who they were. I thought it was Cut Close. I was like, is this Cut Close finally back? Because, you know, I'm always hoping Cut Close comes back.
Yep.
So, but no, it was to hear, like, you could even like hear the Mariah Carey influence. These are her proteges. This album was really good. It had some really good singles, and as an album itself, very, very strong across the board. In 97, it sounds weird now, but in 97, if you were trying to think of like rookies who would kind of take off, you would have had Allure at top of your list because it just seemed like they had all the tools.
I'm going to name 4 sleeper albums here, and you guys give me what you guys want about these ones, because I feel like we could go on and on about these ones. We have Rasan Patterson's debut, Frankie's album, Mario Winans, and Sam Salter. I'll save the Frankie discussion for later because I think that's in my top 3. But, man, what do you guys remember about these 4 albums?
Sam Salter was one that I heard much, much later. I did not hear in 97. Again, I don't think I heard any of those in 97 because, again, you got to remember just how much music we were getting. This ain't like 2020 where I'm like reviewing one R&B album every 3 months. Like we were getting stacks of albums every week. So these albums I heard much later. I had a friend who was obsessed with Rasan, so that one I picked up on. That was very incredible. Sam Salter, so underrated. I think that's an album with a proper push that could have gotten a lot more love at the time for sure, too.
Yeah, and I want to speak about Rasan Patterson's debut album. I love that album. Spend the Night, as I see Nicolette Carney talking about in the comments. It's one of my favorite songs of all time. I found this YouTube performance of him doing it live. It was like a 10-minute performance of the song, and by the end, he was dripping sweat. It looked like he found the Holy Ghost. I mean, we don't get stuff like that anymore. It was amazing to watch. So I love that album, though.
And Mario Winans, that's actually a really good album. Him and Frankie's album, they both just really underrated albums. But I wanted
one more I got to mention. Something for the People. This time it's personal album.
Oh, yes.
They have this great song with Eric Benet on it that I like. They were label mates at the time.
Oh, yes.
But shout out to Something for the People. And I saw someone in their Instagram comments mention that one as well.
Can we talk about 98 Degrees? Because a lot of people are wondering why they're on this collage, why we're mentioning them.
Yes, bring that up.
Well, we know 98 Degrees now as like a poppy group that like exploded at the same time as Backstreet and NSYNC. But if you go back to that debut album, which was on Motown, you had Shep Crawford and Montel Jordan writing on that album. You had Kenny Green writing on this album. Like they were gonna be like the white version of Boyz II Men. Like that was what their goal was. Didn't really turn out that way. It just didn't work commercially. But they do have a big song off that album, which was Invisible Man, which is actually a really good song. But I mean, why didn't it work for 98 Degrees?
I don't know if there's like one factor. I do remember Invisible Man. I was talking, shout out to, I think it was Derry on Twitter who brought this up a couple days ago. And I don't think I've ever heard the album, but I definitely remember Invisible Man. And I think it's a situation where we talked about Pink a couple weeks ago, about how there's an artist who comes in and they try to put her in a mold and they perform well. Not like the songs were bad, but it just wasn't a good fit. And I think they found their niche later on doing the kind of boy band type stuff. So I think it was just a better fit for them. But I mean, they can sing as evidenced by that song. So there's no question about their actual talent. Just didn't fit. And as I keep saying, it was a very competitive time.
Yep. So I think that's all the rookie albums. We're running a little bit late here. So I definitely want to bring in Milka. That's one of our guests. We haven't heard from the Brown, have we, Ed?
Now, I have not heard from him.
So as we do our Rookie of the Year awards and our top 3 favorite albums, I'm going to bring in Milka. I think her Twitter username is Mariah Forever. So
is there anyone else? Do you want me to try to get someone else?
Hey guys.
Hello.
What's
How
up?
are you?
Good.
Thanks
Good.
for
How are
having
you?
me here. I've been listening to you guys forever.
Awesome. We appreciate the
Awesome.
support. That's dope.
Yep. I think
Yeah.
you're actually our first female guest we've ever had too. So
Yay.
we've been talking.
I know I
about-
have to represent for the ladies. I feel like you guys tend to talk about the male artists a little bit more.
Wow. Uh-oh.
Wow, been put on blast. So let me talk about Kelly Price a little bit more.
Oh, man. Well, you've been tuning in every week, so you know how this goes. We're gonna go roundtable discussion here. We're gonna talk about the rookies of the year. I'm sure you've done your
Well,
homework.
before we do that, fill us in. Where were you in life when this was? You don't have to tell us your age, but where were you in life in '97? And
Okay,
You're
so
not
I
fif-
was
You're
I
not
was
15,
6
right?
in '97.
6.
Oh,
Okay.
Man,
oh,
we got some young people coming through this show.
yes.
Yeah. So
Wow.
I was 6, and I think back then I was listening to like Spice Girls and Britney Spears a lot, actually. And it wasn't until I probably started getting into like Ashanti and Beyonce and Mariah. That's when I started getting
Right.
introduced to R&B. And then when YouTube came around, I was 15. And then I think or at least that's when I discovered YouTube. And that's how I found like all of the R&B music.
Wow.
And then my sister, my older sister, she's a year older than me. She's also like really obsessed with 90s R&B. So we just constantly have been listening to that ever since. Yeah.
Dope.
Wow.
That's really cool.
Amazing.
Yes, that's what's up.
Technology.
And do your research. See, there's no
Yeah.
excuse. Do your research.
Yep.
All right. Let's get started here. Rookie of the Year. Tom, we'll start with you. Who had the best debut? Who did you think would, make the biggest impact? Whatever way you want to define it, just give it to me.
Can you remind me of who we're considering rookies real quick?
Not
Who was in the collage?
I'll just name it for everyone out there, so we don't
Okay.
have to do this again. So we have Jagged Edge. We have my Instagram's not loading. Give me a sec. Jagged Edge. We have Allure, Frankie, LSG. Are we counting LSG?
Don't count LSG.
No.
Well, shout outs to Link for writing Your Body, and shout outs to Pretty Ricky for sampling Your Body.
Oh.
No shout outs to Pretty Ricky.
Mario Winans, Next, Rashawn Patterson, Sam Salter, Erica Badu, 98 Degrees, Chris John, Uncle Sam. I think that's
All
it.
right. There's only one answer that could be for this one.
Ooh.
It's Next for me. It's gotta be Next.
Oh my goodness.
This is what
It
I
was
have to
either
put
Next
up with every week.
or Rashawn Patterson, and I'm going with my boys KGRL. Next. I'm their publicist, so I gotta support.
Wow.
We know who signs the checks.
Well, Butter Love is so good. I still listen to that one all the time.
So, and there's some, if you haven't heard the whole album, there's some good album cuts in there too, like Cozy and a few others. So check it out if you haven't heard the whole thing.
Right.
Yeah.
What about you, Ed?
I mean, there is absolutely no question. Erica Badu blows the other rookies out. There are some that in the time you could say Maybe Allure, maybe in 97, there would have been like a push for Allure, maybe a JE push, but I think of all of them, and there's some great rookies. Like it's Badu and Nobody's Close.
What about you, Milka?
I would say Erykah Badu, just because I still heavily follow her music to today. But I would say Jagged Edge for second place.
Nice.
Yeah.
My rookie of the year. I was probably gonna go with Erykah Badu as my pick, but as I think to like my top threes for later, I might not be able to actually include this guy in my awards, so I have to give it to him here. I'm gonna give it to Frankie.
Who?
Frankie.
Who's?
We're gonna give it to Frankie.
Frankie
Listen,
J.
I thought it was Frankie. No, I actually thought it was Frankie J too. But listen, I don't know if you guys have heard.
Frankie J. It's a different Frankie.
No, this album is like if you like Faith Evans' debut album, if you like 112's album, like this is the record. Like this is an amazing album. And the crazy thing is, number one, I don't know where he is today. I don't think he's even on social media. But number two, I've never seen his full face before because on the album cover, he has the little hat that covers his face. I don't know what he looks like. I just know I just know he made an amazing album. And if he had come out, I'm telling you, if he comes out in 2020 when Her has like the glasses and covers her whole face, Frankie could do it too. We need Frankie back in 2020.
Oh
Thank
my
you.
gosh. Yeah, we'll put on the Kane mask, just like I've been wanting her to do all these years.
Kane mask.
Yes, the Kane mask on.
Oh boy.
So on this podcast, we have Nick's publicist and Frankie's publicist. Impressive.
Yes, we do.
Yes. All right. Top 3 albums of 1997. There's a lot, but let's start with you, Tom. What is your number 3?
All right. So in the spirit of representing for the females, and because it's so close, I'm giving Mariah's Butterfly number 3.
Woo. That's a good
Love
pick.
the album. It could easily be number 1, but it's slightly edged out. It slightly, for me, edges out Joe. I'm sorry, Joe. We still love you, but I'm going with Mariah.
Good pick, Tom.
Good pick. Ed, number 3.
Oh, I hate agreeing with Tom, but my number 3 also will be Butterfly. And I know that a lot of people are going to be like, what did you pick? Even if I do my honorable mentions, we're still talking like 4.5-star albums. I'm Janet, Cool Relax, Evolution, which I still love. I think it's super underrated. There's just so much good stuff in 97, but number 3 would be number 1 in almost any other year. But Mariah, Butterfly, number 3.
What about you, Milka? Number 3.
We know it ain't gonna be Butterfly.
I'm going with Jon B's Cool Relax.
Wow.
Yeah. Me and my sister play that album all of the time. Like she was listening to it nonstop this week, and I think we've been to his concert maybe like 3 times within the last few years. And he plays like those really good songs on that were never released, like Shine and like those gems on there. So they're really good. I
have to show you so much respect. You were 6 when the album came out, and you've now gone back and fully appreciate it. That's respect.
That's pretty cool.
No excuse.
Yep.
All right, my number 3. I don't think I can put Frankie in my top 3 after all I just said earlier, so I'm gonna have to go with my alternate. My number 3 will have to be Mary J. Blige, Share My World. From top to bottom, great album. I love that Little Kim record still to this day. And those Babyface records are also like saddest songs of all time.
Oh yeah. How many saddest songs of all time? You got 37.
Well, we'll have a whole podcast episode on saddest songs of all time next week. How about that, Ed?
Did you guys scratch all of your number 3s out and replace them with women because of my comment?
No,
you guys did all 3.
Oh my god!
I mean, no. You may have influenced that decision, but no.
Oh my god!
You scratch out Frankie, put in Mary.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see if number 1 is a male. But Tom, number 2.
Shout out to our boy Anthony Costa chiming in the comments. We see you. He said everyone's correct so far. So everyone, let's not let him down with any of our picks because he's really excited about our picks so far.
But we haven't had the same pick. How can we all be correct?
Because he means we're all making good picks, I think.
Oh, okay.
I guess.
All right.
All right, I'm gonna go with, and this one was easy for me too. And it's not just because we have a female here. I was going with Mary J. Share My World, number 2. Love this album. Like I said, Everything was my first song in my wedding dance, so I have to always show love to this album.
Great. Ed?
I need Tom to stop cheating off of my list because I too have Mary at number 2. Again, any other year, this would have been number 1 by far, but this is an incredible year, so can't do that. But Mary's 5-star album, in my opinion. Still not her best album because she's that great, but number 2 on my list. I know we don't have the same number 1, Tom, because I know what your number 1 is.
Really?
No, I know.
What about you, Milka?
I love Mary J's album, but I have to do Erykah Badu's Baduism for number 2, just because I really heavily play that front to back all the time. I just love the instrumentals on there, you know, like all of the bass and the whole sound. It's like jazzy and funky and soulful and just really original. So I love that album.
That's a great pick.
So do I.
Great pick. My number 2, and I'm mad because I'm trying to pull it up on my phone, but I can't find it. I'm gonna go with. See, I was gonna post Ed's photo of his Usher costume, but I can't find it, and I'm sorry.
Oh, I got it. I'll send it to you.
All right. So I'm gonna go with Usher's album "My Way" as my number 2. It's not a perfect album, but the good songs are really, really good. The Monica duet slow jams, Bedtime, and then those big singles. The up tempos probably not my favorite, but the slower songs I think good enough for me. So that's my number 2. And Tom, we're now back to you for your number 1 favorite album. You might not be this man's publicist. I already know who it is, and you might not be his publicist.
We all know who it is.
Or his manager, but who is it? Who's your number 1?
My number 1 is actually a surprise pick, and it's actually a group. It is Camp Lo's Uptown Saturday Night album, Ed.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
See, I was about to kick him off the podcast. Now he has a seat for life.
I'm just kidding. That's hip hop. That doesn't count. Love that album, though.
It
Obviously,
should count, though.
My number 1, he is not my real life brother, although some people have called me his brother, but that's not true. We're just both white. Jon B's Cool Relax album.
Wow.
Love that album.
Hey,
Classic.
You don't see me making Jin my top 3 favorite rappers, Tom.
Oh my God.
Listen.
Jen. I hope Jen would be happy he's on anybody's list.
I don't just like the album because he's white. There's plenty of albums from white people that I think are garbage, so
Okay.
I
Ed,
keep it real.
Ed just sent me the his number 1 pick. So this is, I don't know if you got, that's Ed right there.
You guys are gonna have to post that. It's hard to see this way.
I don't know. Can you guys see that? That's Ed.
Perched
Oh my God.
on a staircase somewhere down south.
Down south. And I was going to say it was cold. It wasn't too cold that day. Yeah, we'll post it.
Anyway, what is your number 1, Ed?
My number 1, to me, one of the best albums of the decade, Miss Erykah Badu, Baduism. Number 1, the pinnacle of kind of leading into the neo soul movement. This is where we talk about D'Angelo, we talk about Maxwell. To me, this is like the third one in that trinity, so to speak, and it kind of sets the way for the next, 5 or 6 years going into the 2000s. Badu set the tone. I love the interludes, as you were saying earlier, even the album cuts, 4-Leaf Clover, just incredible. 5 stars too. Badu, number 1.
All right. And Milka, you're number 1. And
It's very obvious.
Well, please remind the people,
Very.
what your Twitter handle is so they can follow you.
Oh, it's like Mariah for real forever or something.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you know?
I only got a Twitter to support Mariah. Like I don't have my own Twitter.
But don't feel bad. Did you know my screen name for AOL used to be TL Room 112 back in the day? Because I was a huge 112 fan.
I think you mentioned that on a podcast.
I love to share that embarrassing story. Yeah.
But I'm not embarrassed. I'm still rocking with my Mariah
cool.
for real forever.
Wait, before you give us your number one pick, have you ever
Yes.
fought someone on social media because they slandered Mariah?
So
Oh my god.
Oh, she
I
probably
was gonna
like me.
I was gonna say not only random people, but like my friends all the time. I think people, when they know that you really like somebody, they just like to, you know, pick at you and like make fun of you for it. But
Yes.
That's
yes,
him.
yeah,
Yes.
exactly. But I've just learned, you know, everybody has their own taste. So you can't force somebody to like feel the same things that you feel when you listen to an album.
Well,
So
Yeah.
I'll tell you like this. There are opinions, but there's right and wrong. And what you're about to say as your number one is the right answer. What is number one?
Okay, for me, it is Butterfly by Mariah.
Thank you.
And it's actually my favorite Mariah album. And I would say it's because a lot of the songwriting on this one, most of it she does like purely herself. And I would just say the whole era, like there's all these remixes, dance remixes, hip hop remixes for like each of the singles. The videos are great. And it's just her breaking free, you know, from finding her independence. I like that whole turning to a butterfly thing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So-
That's my number one as well. If not for anything else, but it's for the fact that she flipped a Mobb Deep sample. Because when you listen to Shook Ones Part 2, Tom, when you listen to that song, don't you just want to fight the next person that like stands next to you that looks at you wrong? Somehow
And
Mariah turned that.
Ed, the remix of the song had Big Noid on it. I mean,
Oh
it
my
doesn't
god!
get more.
Shout out Big Noid. I'm sure he's somewhere now punching fire hydrants just for fun.
What?
Just watch his knuckles bleed. That's the kind of brother he is.
No, but the fact
Oh.
that Mariah was able to flip that sample and turn it into the roof, like that to me solidifies her as one of the greats when it comes to an artist and songwriter, because not anybody can do that. So I'm going with Mariah as
Absolutely.
my number one.
I mean, it'd be like Kim taking a DMX song and flipping it and old girling over some "Get at Me, Dog." Like it's an incredible kind of evolution of that sound.
And I have a controversial statement to make. I just saw Nicolette's comment here. She believes that My All is an amazing song. I actually don't like that song, believe it or not.
It's
Do you
just,
like the remix?
I love the remix.
Okay.
The
Yeah,
remix is
the remix. That's one of my favorite. That's one of my favorite songs of all time. The original is just okay. Another reason why I got 4.5 stars. Sorry.
Oh, that's the first Mariah song that I ever heard, actually.
Really?
So I
The
love
remix or the original?
the original.
It needed to be a little more sad. Anyways, Tom, I think that's it for this week. 1997 was fun. Are we doing 96 next?
That's we got a game
Is
plan
it-
for that.
Wait, is it
They're already
Christmas?
talking about it in the comments.
Is it
about
No, we're
96.
Christmas
doing-
next Saturday?
Christmas
It's
is on
the
a
No, I
Friday.
thought that was
26th.
Friday.
Okay, because I'm not missing Christmas to talk about R&B.
Well,
Yeah.
you have. You won't miss your Christmas. I thought that we were talking about a year and wrap up, then 96, but I'm just I'll show up and we'll talk
Let's
about
not hold our production meeting live on the air during a podcast. How about
All right. Well,
that?
Ed, I'll pass it on to you then. What's going on with SoulAndStereo.com?
Please do check out Soul and Stereo this week because we got a bunch of junk going on this week. As I talked about last week, we have our 50 best albums of 2020. That list is up. The best in R&B and hip hop. Go check out anything that you missed because I got that. I've got some of our favorite songs of the year from both R&B and hip hop. A playlist of about, I think it's like 80 songs or something like that. So if there are any songs that you've been missing out on, come and catch up. I got you. Kyle, we got a new episode of Love Letters. We asked, should married couples be allowed to follow each other on social media? Y'all got some issues. It's Christmas. Be nice. So I get to talk about that.
Oh,
And hopefully next week this time, I will have the annual. And y'all been, I'm like, it's like pressure because everybody's so hyped. The 2020 Player Please Award. It's been so much foolishness this year that people expect like SNL level comedy. So I'm gonna try to go hard for you. Player Please Awards next week.
Nice. Tom, over at I Got Soul, partnered up with Soul in Stereo. We released our top 70 songs of 2020. This might be our very last list that we ever do because you were getting killed on social media.
Ed, I'm done, Ed. I'm retiring from making these lists because I've been taking a beating all week. Why didn't you guys include so-and-so on the list? I'm sorry. We have only a certain number of songs. We can't include every single song that came out.
You could do what I do and just call everything a top 5 song.
Well, I love when they tag the artist. I love when they tag the artist and the artist gets mad too.
Yeah.
Oh,
yes, they will snitch. It is something, but
we need,
for the sake of journalism, keep it real.
You didn't list all of them this year, right? You were like, these are the top 10, and everything else is in alphabetical order. So you already were trying to, avoid some haters that way.
Yeah. It didn't work.
Yeah.
But this might be it, Ed. We'll see. We'll talk. I don't know.
I'll coach you.
Well, we do have a couple more interviews that we're lining up on Instagram, so stay tuned for that. And Milka, you're the guest for today. Tell the people what you have going on. Are you hoarding toilet paper? Because I think you might get blocked by Ed, but what's going on with you?
Nothing. I'm really hoping for some more R&B music in 2021. Like, I'm really hoping to get an album from Maxwell, from Janet Jackson. How about you guys?
The same, everyone you mentioned.
I want a new album from Chico DeBarge and Carl Thomas.
Yes.
And Music Soul Child.
Chico DeBarge and Carl Thomas. Well,
it's been like 10 years.
Well,
10 years? Music had an album the other day.
No, I meant for Carl and for Chico.
Okay, now those two, yes.
Well, I've been waiting for Usher's album to drop exclusively on Tidal for a year now. It's still not here, so maybe it'll drop on Christmas.
Usher.
We'll get there.
Don't get your hopes up.
But
guys,
I think
our boy Shaquille Perry's already picking out his outfit for '96. He's so excited over there. That's cool.
Oh, he's got his FUBU on and his gigantic jeans. All right, Shaquille, we'll see you.
All right. Well, I appreciate everyone for tuning in this week. If you're listening to this, you've probably missed out on that versus battle between E40 and Too Short. Tom, I know you're very disappointed about that.
That was happening? I didn't even know.
That's on right now. But I appreciate everyone for tuning in. Milka, I appreciate you for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
And we'll be back next week to talk about, I think, 1996 might be the year in countdown. You'll just have to tune in to find out. And we're out. So you guys take care.
Milka, thank you so much for the support and thanks for tuning in. You've been a great guest. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
All right. Take care.